Hello everybody, welcome to our Rocky Buckets. Subscribe to the channel if you haven't already and drop a like on this video. This is Hot Takes, let's get into it. The Golden State Warriors will have a 2022 Celtics type turnaround. I'm going to say no to this simply because a 2022 Celtics type turnaround is borderline unprecedented in NBA history, not to mention that now we are in February and I think it would literally be impossible to replicate that record-wise in terms of maybe win percentage you could replicate it, but I think the Celtics started to make their turnaround early January, so that's it's too late to do that, really. So to do it exactly as they did is pretty much impossible. To do it as well as they did is pretty much impossible. You could say that they can turn things around and get right back in the NBA Finals, because if you told me the Warriors ended up making the Finals, I would kind of believe you just because of how open the Western Conference just so happens to be. So with that being the case, I do think the Warriors could end up being a Finals team, but to say that they would do something as dramatic as what the Celtics did, just no way. The Magic have the best future in the NBA. I would give that title to the Oklahoma City Thunder. I think that given that Shea is as good as he is, and they have a lot of other prospects who are genuinely intriguing, like Josh Giddey's already good, and I projected that he'd be like a role player type of guy, but honestly starting to look like he could be even an all-star, and you take him, Pokuševski's probably going to prove to be a valuable role player. Jalen Williams has a lot of upside. I still believe that Trey Mann could be really good, although he looks like he might just end up being a scoring six-man, which is cool. And then, of course, they have Chet Holmgren coming around the corner, and then they have a treasure trove of draft assets, so much so that they could literally probably trade 5 first-round picks, and that only really puts a bit of a dent in the pool of what they had. Of course, each pick's quality varies from, depending on the team situation, but the assets that they have, the young players that they have, I personally would view that as better than what Orlando has going on. That said, Orlando is certainly in the top 5 in that category, and I think they have the tools to potentially be a powerhouse in the future if they either A, get another star, or one of their players develops into being a star, because I think Franz and Paolo guaranteed future all-stars. Everybody else, I think Wendell could maybe put himself in that conversation, and I think Jalen Suggs has shown signs, but has obviously been super inconsistent. I really actually like this Magic team a ton. Weirdly enough, I'm enjoying seeing them take the fruits of the Bulls' labors because they decided to make a bad trade. Floor spacing from bigs is overrated, and it's used as a scapegoat to mask poor offensive schemes. I do think that overrated is a fair concept. I feel like a lot of people take on this point of view that, like, if you can't shoot, you're useless. And that's just not true. And especially in lineups where you have other shooters, you can complement the type of player who can't shoot but is a really strong interior presence. Really, where not being able to space the floor as a big man becomes a problem is when you have 2 players that can't do it. If you have 2 genuine non-shooting big men on the floor at the same time, that can be problematic. It can work, like Kevin Looney and Draymond Green work just fine, but overall my point being spacing definitely matters a ton. Another thing that I do want to throw out there is a concept that I wasn't actually that familiar with, but it really, just put words to, it's just a way of naming something I already understood, which was vertical gravity, which is the ability to catch alley-oops and things like that. And just having the option to throw the ball vaguely at the rim and you have a guy who has a reasonable chance of catching it and immediately putting it in, like, that's a huge luxury, and it's a luxury that not every team has. And you can see with, like, guys who are genuine lob threats that having that as an option definitely makes defenses in the paint play things a little bit differently. Even if the play doesn't result in an alley-oop, it could result in a guard getting a layup because the center was trying to play for the alley-oop. Things like that. Everything is interconnected, and spacing is important, but it's not the only thing. And some people act like it is, and it's dumb. The Cavaliers and the Nuggets will make the finals. Those are 2 teams that I think have a strong chance. If I was going to bet between the 2 of them, I would say the Denver Nuggets are far more likely to, just given the fact that the Bucks and the Celtics exist, especially the Celtics. Frankly, my guess, I'm banking on a Celtics-Nuggets finals personally. That's what I think is going to happen. I do think a Sixers-Nuggets, especially if the Sixers pull off some depth moves this deadline. Apparently, they're rumored for Van Orlando. Stuff like that, if that happens, they could end up being there. And I really actually am almost rooting for that, because an Embiid Jokic finals, even if my guy on this side of the debate, even though I do like Embiid too, I'm definitely more of a Jokic guy, even if he ends up losing the side of that, I do think ultimately it will be fun. A little bit toxic, no doubt, but fun. But yeah, I do think that's a reasonable take. I think the Cavaliers are probably my third or fourth pick, depending on how I feel about the Bucks going into it to come out of the East, but it's possible. Sticking to the Cavaliers theme, we're talking about Evan Mobley, who apparently has GOAT defender potential. He has been a very underrated this year and is already a top 5 defender in the league. Great rim protector, can legit guard 1 through 5, makes high-level reads, and has great athletic tools. I will say some of his lateral movement from time to time can be a little bit weird and sometimes more lumbering than it should be, but he's definitely a mobile guy. He's Evan Mobley, even some might say. Rudy, edit up effect over that. I don't know if he's a top 5 defender in the league. He's probably top 10. He's probably in that conversation. He is a great rim protector. He is pretty good at guarding most players 1 through 5. I will say, when people throw that out there are some exceptions. Like he can defend most of the time, most 1s through 5s. But like, if Steph Curry gets Evan Mobley on him on a switch, he's gonna make that a problem for Evan, you know. And that might not necessarily be the same with a big man. Also, with how scrawny he is, there are just times where he gets out physicaled. Not as often as people who were hating on him going into the draft suggested, but yeah, that's the thing that happens. I also will attest that, in terms of the defensive GOAT conversation, I do think he has a lot of similar tools to Tim Duncan. And really, I think I kind of am tied in terms of who I think the GOAT defender is, and it's between Tim Duncan and Hakeem Olajuwon. And I kind of lean more towards Hakeem lately, but Evan Mobley has drawn a lot of Tim Duncan comparisons, and frankly, I think they're entirely warranted, which says a lot about how much potential Evan Mobley has. But defensively, it's a similar archetype, just in a modern context. And I super appreciate that about Evan, and I do think if he ended up being a top 5 defender of all time by the time his career was all said and done, I wouldn't be, the most surprised by that, because starting out with what he has is about as good as you can start out. He's honestly one of the best defensive rookies, maybe the best defensive rookie that I've ever seen. Steven Adams is one of the best centers in the league. And we're going to see how important he is to the Grizzlies in the next few weeks while he is out. People are sleeping on Adams. Right. That's exactly why they always bench him in the playoffs, because he's one of the best centers in the league. That definitely tracks. Steven Adams is cool. For what he's good at, he's really good at. But slow-footed, not as good offensively as he used to be. He used to actually be a not terrible, inside the paint creator, in the post and stuff like that. Not really a thing he does anymore. His playmaking's cool and all that. He's fine, but one of the best centers in the league is that list. If you're top 20 in that position, are you one of the best centers? I guess technically, but he's not a top 10 center. He's not a top 15 center probably, and I don't even know if he is a top 20 center. So no, bad take. You look your age. That is also a bad take, because I definitely don't. I am 22. I would say that I look like I'm in my late 20s. Other people would say I look like in my late 60s. So, where you fall on that spectrum, one way or the other, I look older than I am. But I'm not 45 with a divorce and 2 kids, like so many people like to project. Anyways, let's get to a last take, which is the media take of the video. And this one, I don't have a screenshot for the tweet because I deleted the original tweet and accidentally deleted the screenshot. But my friend, I guess I can call him that, friend, enemy, first guy that Desmond said to me, or tweeted at me, that Rick Grimes was one of the strongest protagonists in television history. And I am inclined to agree. I do think that Rick is a fairly simple character in the grand scheme of things, but the things that are very core to him, you can tell. I do love that he progressively just becomes more and more feral, and then eventually has to learn to be be a little bit more human than he has been, because he gets a little too far gone, which I think is literally a line that's used in The Walking Dead. I do think as soon as Carl dies, like, it just doesn't feel like there's a point for his character anymore. Like, the driving force of the original plot of the first episode of the show was Rick getting his family and protecting them. And Lori dying makes complete sense, but Carl not making it, I don't know how he would go on from that point, even if he does have the daughter to worry about. But I do think Andrew Lincoln is a brilliant actor. And frankly, I think The Walking Dead is lower quality than what he's deserving of. Like Andrew Lincoln deserves to be in movies. He deserves to be in other stuff, like taken seriously as an actor, because he's a super duper talented actor who could probably do anything and do it well. And he honestly strengthens Rick Grimes as a character, because what I understand from him in the comic is that he's fine, but like, good lord, Andrew Lincoln just nails that role and makes him feel real, makes it feel believable, makes him feel human, even when he is being almost borderline inhumanly violent. And he's badass. And frankly, I don't think characters always have to be more than that. Sometimes a character is just badass and it's entertaining, and what else do you have to do? Not much. And ultimately, it ends up being good. I think The Walking Dead overall, after season 7 onward, huge dip in quality, but before that was probably like a 7.5 out of 10 on average, with actually great moments and some of the best moments in television history, but also a lot of bad ones and a lot of mediocre ones, and it does drag on for way too long.